In today's video, I want to talk about the 3 biggest diet mistakes I see people make and some general guidelines that you can implement to make sure you're avoiding them and ensuring that your diet is as successful as possible. Now, point number 1 is the fact that many people that I see underestimate their caloric intake. I can't tell you how many messages I've gotten over the years that all sound vaguely similar in the aspect of, hey Brandon, I'm trying to lose weight, I'm only eating X amount of calories and it's not helping, what can I do? Unfortunately, you're not a unique snowflake, and the chances are you're just eating more calories than you think. And this can be for a couple of reasons. Some people that are first getting into dieting and don't have a lot of experience tend to not understand calories and how they work. They usually think of food as either good or bad. So as long as they're eating the good foods on their diet, they should be losing weight. And that's obviously not the case in most instances. Another problem is a lot of people overly rely on the nutrition information on the foods that they're eating and going onto websites for maybe restaurants they're eating out at, which is a problem within itself. But I know many people that are younger and don't have time to make their own food want to eat at options like, let's say, Chipotle, and then go on the website and just kind of base their intake off of that. And those things can both be wildly inaccurate when you start actually considering portion sizes and serving sizes, which leads me into my third point on this aspect here. And that is, I think many of us are blissfully unaware of what I call tracking their calories that they intake. So for me personally, this is where I'm guilty. I might be making a sandwich or making something where I use peanut butter, and in my tracking device, I might put that I had 1 serving. In reality, I know it's probably closer to 3 or 4 servings. The same thing can be true when it comes to olive oil or other condiments or beverages that contain calories. Many people just don't want to own up to how much they're using, or again, are just unaware of it. So how do you fix this? Well, as I just mentioned, being honest with your tracking device. So the first thing I would say is download something like MyFitnessPal or FitGenie. Both are free and enable you to track the calories and foods that you're eating. But number 2 is invest in a food scale. And you can get a cheap one on Amazon for under $20. I'll link an example of one in the description box. That way you can actually gauge how much you're eating and use MyFitnessPal to get a true readout of the caloric intake, as well as your macronutrient breakdown to make sure that you're truly accurate here. Now, obviously, if you've never done this before, weighing food and tracking food, it might seem like it's kind of tedious, but to be honest, it comes to be second nature once you get used to it, and it'll allow you to truly see how much you're taking in per day, and chances are it's going to be significantly higher than you had initially estimated. So point number 1 is dealing with underestimating. Point number 2 is dealing with overestimating, and that's when it comes to caloric expenditure or how much energy you're burning throughout the course of a day through your normal activity levels. Now, of course, it would be nice if lifting weights in your basement burned a ton of calories, but let's be honest, it doesn't. But I think many of us are in the mindset, or at least we tell ourselves mentally, that what we're doing is fairly active and we're burning a ton of calories. In reality, that's not the case. Now, in some cases, it's not our fault. We can blame things like cardio machines that overestimate caloric expenditure. But in the long run, chances are when you combine overestimating caloric expenditure with underestimating your caloric intake, that's just a recipe for not losing weight. So how do you go about this? How do you fix this? What I would suggest is not counting your caloric expenditure at all. Now, one of the downsides of having something like a fitness tracker app is oftentimes when you first set that up to get an idea of how many calories you should be taking in per day, it asks you your expenditure level. So how active are you on a daily basis? So it figures that into tracking your calories on how much you're allowed to eat. The problem here, though, is when you go into your daily tracking routine, sometimes you can actually input that you did X amount of cardio that day too, and what that app will then do is account for that and allow you to eat more food. I would suggest against doing this, however, though, as I've already mentioned, it's already taking into account your daily expenditure levels already, and in this case, it's actually doubling up on them, so it's actually saying you're a lot more active than you are. Now, that sounds pretty confusing because I don't know what the hell I just said, but in the long run, you shouldn't track your energy expenditure, in my opinion. So point number 3, what are we going to talk about? We've talked about underestimating, we've talked about overestimating. The last thing to talk about here is just your diet in general, and that is picking the right diet for you. So what I see from a lot of people is they choose to go with fad diets or diets that aren't sustainable in the long run. The reason I made this video only 3 main dieting problems is because if we got to 4 or 5 or the top 10, that's a lot of shit to remember, and when it comes to complexity, many of us aren't good at keeping something complex at top of mind for an extended amount of time. So what I want to do here when you're talking about what diet to choose is take a look at which diet will actually be sustainable for you in the long run. Meaning that if you like to eat carbs a lot, you probably shouldn't do the keto diet because you don't hardly eat any carbs for there. If you like to eat every 2 to 3 hours, you probably shouldn't try intermittent fasting because you'll go long periods of time without eating. So take a look at the diets that you're thinking about. Make sure that it's not restricting completely some of the foods that you enjoy, because that'll tend to lead you to binging and overdoing it and indulging to the fact where that diet is going to be busted. Pick something that you could do for the long run and you'll have the best results possible. So those are my top 3 dieting problems and some guidelines to avoid them. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Is there something I missed? Is there something you think is more important? In the meantime, we'll talk to you in the next video.